This conference will now be recorded.
But we have to, that says 403?
That says 403.
Here it says 403.
We
Yeah,
need
but
to figure
that's-
this out then.
That's a go-to problem,
I
not
know.
a,
No, it's not a go-to
Afterwards, I thought
problem. It's
all these things I
the
should've
computer is saying that it's 403.
well, as long as it's on.
That is
it-
not okay, Greg. That thing should know the time better than that thing.
said. And when they do supplements.
No, I think we're a half an hour closer to being done.
Okay,
Okay. We gotta let anybody in.
Neither Rask nor Webb is here. I
Oh,
emailed-
but when we do roll call, Counselor Webb called, he's got an appointment. He should be here by about 5, he said.
okay.
And Perry, even before this meeting, it was tentative, so
So they're both-
I imagine it didn't work out since.
They're
she's not
both
here.
excused.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the main point.
Okay. So I would like to open this third continuation of the budget meeting to continue to review the funds on May 23rd at 4:35. We're going to review the funds. We finished with the water reserve fund, and we are now on to the sewer enterprise fund, and that is on page 16 of 25. And I will turn this meeting over to Melissa and David.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I forgot to do roll call.
Oh.
And it looks like we have Corey present, and Randy present, Ann present, Pat present, Tim present, Gary present, and Greg present. And Counselor Rask and Counselor Webb are both excused. Mr. Webb may show up a little bit later in the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. So I only have a couple more sections of notes from David Johnson. So I'm going to start here with this sewer enterprise. It says the sewer enterprise fund began with a $210 shortfall. Because of this, the council also authorized a use of sewer capital reserve funds. The current year, $150,000 is transferred to sewer fund and $300,000 is proposed in the fiscal year 25 budget. So that is on page 16, line 9, is that transfer from the sewer capital reserves for that, which again takes our reserve fund down low. On page 17, line 60, the $108, $242 charge for water has been added to the sewer fund. So that again was from the large capital outlay and use of water by the sewer, by the wastewater treatment plant. And so that money was charged there.
What line item was that, Melissa?
Line 60.
There it is. Yes,
108,000,
yes.
716.
Correct.
I don't know if you did seven.
She did.
Let's see. Additionally, so remember we're trying to balance this with expenditure reduction and with revenue increase. So additionally, the rate increase of 96 cents to the base rate and 51 cents for consumption is estimated to bring in $21,781. And the rate increase for designated reserves for reserves base rate of $1 and 50 cents for the consumption rate will be $21,206 for a total increase to revenue of $42,315. So on the sheet that I handed out before, and I brought them again, this green sheet that we talked about, the rate increases. Randy, here's extras. Yeah.
Didn't we take those back? or no?
No. There were two pieces to this. These were the estimated rate increases for both water enterprise fund and sewer enterprise fund down below. And so that, the sewer enterprise fund and sewer capital reserves fund, the proposed rate increases of the 96 cents and the 51 cents are there in the middle column under sewer enterprise and sewer capital reserve funds.
So when you're, just so we understand this on this budget, when you're talking about the increase in revenue that's going to come from the rates, that's just going to be in the, under like line number 5, sewer usage fees. That's the up. Where does that come into the budget?
David,
So in the reserve, it'll be in the revenue section on page 16.
Yeah, so like number 5, under line 5, that's where the sewer usage, that's,
I believe so, right.
or is that,
David, is that where those rate increases would go into line 5 on page 16? Sewer usage?
Yes.
The
They're,
rate-
they're asking if all the sewer charges go on line 5 for sewer usage, like sewer usage
Yes, for,
is the use, what we get for sewer charges.
right.
And you can also see on those previous two, like from the activity and stuff too, that 20, that increase.
there's, yeah, okay.
And so with that, if we now head on page, well, the transfers and the rate increases with that has balanced the sewer fund. And then if we look finally at we aren't going to move to the next one yet, but the sewer reserve basically goes to 0 after all of that has been moved out.
So actually that line 5, if you look, the number is the same as the last year's budget, the adopted budget last year. It's basically actually a little bit less for sewer usage on page 7, page 16. Just trying to understand this, you guys. I don't mean
Right.
to be a pain. I'm just,
No, it's
David, on line number 5, and ask a question. So for the proposed 24-25, we have 574,195 for the ending balance
For,
for
that's
the
what we're
sewer
projecting.
usage.
Yes.
Yes, but she's saying in 2023-24, our adopted budget, we budgeted for 575. So I believe her question is, there's not really an increase there, but there is an increase over the estimated ending.
And that's what I would go by as the estimated ending.
Okay,
That's more actual than,
okay.
That was an overly ambitious number, and it is close to the one that he projected, but that's just the one that was the adopted budget number, and he's going more off of
Got it.
year-to-date
Okay.
activity and what he estimates.
okay, got it. Thank you so much.
The adopted budget number can really throw your head off because you look at it like it's just another audited year, and that's not
Yes.
the case, and that's why it's nice to see those other two columns.
Estimated. Okay, got it. Thank you, Pat.
We should get close to this proposed for the 24-25 with the increase, I would think. That'll be a little bit closer number.
Oh, yeah, the
It should
math
be.
works out from what we received, and I like the number. It's realistic. Well, it's realistic with those increases, I should say.
Right, right.
at least wasn't such a huge increase. It was just by the CPI and the CCI for the sewer fund. If you would notice on line 1 on page 16, the prior year fund balance is basically what your checkbook says the end of the year. And if you see that number kind of bouncing around about the same, so it didn't need a huge increase for it to break even.
Gotcha.
And so just to reiterate, the proposed increase is just the CPI of what was there
$1.
normally.
Right.
Right.
Just a
So
standard
just the standard
CPI
CPI. So this isn't anything outlandish. This is the standard, what we would do no matter what, that's been voted on by council and is all good. Okay.
One other point on page 16, line 3, the DEQ watershed grant. And talking with Ann, she's saying that the half principal forgiveness has already been given.
Mhm.
So how did that work, Ann? Did they give the city a full 776,000 and then we give the money back to them?
No, they gave us the full money, 700, however much it was. And then we paid it to buy the land. And so my understanding is as soon as they gave it to us, they forgave it so that if you look at I'd have to go into my files, but if you look at the amount that we owe, it's this amount, which is the 400,000 that we owe. But we tacked onto that a little bit of extra money to do stewardship activities because there was a fire up there and we had to kind of do gorse removal. That was 25,000. So basically that's like we're spending 12, but we're getting 25. Like, so, and we used a little bit of that 25 we had to use to pay that extra lawyer fee that we did not account for. We had to pay some of it. There was some that went to paying closing costs. And so there's some of it left that's now supposed to be used over the next 3 years to get rid of gorse. And then at that point, that's when we start paying the loan back. So we're not, as you were saying, you're concerned that the interest on that 400,000 is going to be high for those 3 years of 1%. So anyway, I'm going to look into that.
You were going to check into that, but
Yeah.
I just trying to figure, the paperwork on these grants are basically non-existent. Everything I can find is preliminary in the draft, and it does not say, my understanding is that the forgiveness was not going to happen until we made our first payment.
Well, I'll look into that because we do have we have a loan agreement. We have a relationship with those people. I can just get on the horn tomorrow and nail that down.
Because if they already forgave it, we should have recorded that last year in the 23.
Yes, right.
But lack of grant paperwork, no one knows what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and that may be I have it, but you didn't have it, or I think Dina had it because she was involved with all of that. But it's part of our little bit of disarray, I would say right now, of not not knowing who knows
So I
what's
think
going on.
really the question, and like we talked about, would be to find out if they've already forgiven the half forgiveness, if they are carrying the full amount of the loan until we close the loan, then they're going to be charging us actually 2% interest. So as far as this budget is concerned, I think if we put the half forgiveness in here going forward to cover, and it actually needs to be $413,008. And also on page 18, on line 62, That line also needs to be $413,800. And I will take the difference out of contingency.
I'm going to nail that down and I'll send you an email tomorrow as best I can to explain that. Or I'll send you the loan agreement too and see if I can track it down. If you don't have it.
Watch those bankers.
The very good news is I've told you guys this before, but I'm going to tell you again that I served on a rulemaking committee so that we can go and get another grant to repay our outstanding loan. So hopefully
Yeah.
the interest won't be a problem, that we'll be able to get that 400,000 back.
Right.
So that would be very cool.
Years to organize it, basically.
Yeah, but we'll probably do it this year, actually.
Oh, wow.
because It's coming up, so.
Very
Yeah,
Yeah,
we could use it.
Yeah.
So David should have a few new figures for us for page 18, I would
Except
assume.
it will have to go directly to them to pay off the debt. It won't come to us unless we decide.
So in order to balance the budget, on line 92, unappropriated reserve, I'll reduce that by $11,608. And it will now be 13,392. What original intentions with this is that it would cover that 10,000 that you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
So I think let's just kind of leave this sit like it is. And once we figure out, I don't think it'll bother the budget.
Mhm.
And we'll just leave that. The 10,000 should be worked in here.
Now, can I just ask another question, which is, why did we end up putting this in the sewer side instead of the water side, this grant, this DEQ grant? Is it because,
Someone said sewer, and so that's where DEQ drew up all the documents that was
Right.
coming out of sewer.
right, maybe it was because
But
initially
it
it
was
had to do
probably
with the bonding or something like that. Okay.
But it was probably a good thing because Water Enterprise, where it should have been, was broke and didn't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
And they probably wouldn't have gave us the money.
That's probably why it is. I was just like, my whatever, just order brain was like, why is this? But good answer.
But
That
also,
also adds into my joke earlier about using that $750,000 for dredging, because we just purchased water to make the water, to make our water to recycle. So put a little bit of dredging in there and we're golden. Sorry, I got off track there.
Yeah, but
so anyway, that's hopefully clears up some of
For
these
joking,
grants.
It could work.
so is that the only change on page 18, David, was the number 92? Or
92, and I also increased line to 62 to the $413,008.
$413,800, okay.
And so one more follow-up question on this, and maybe we can talk about it more offline, is what this is going to come down to is when there's an invoice for that money to go cut down gorse, which may come in anytime. Is Dina going to know that comes from line number, whatever line it is, right? That's the piece I'm just wanting to understand. Is that, do you think that's going to be clear through how it's going?
So one of I think so, because one of the things that you're seeing right now is a PDF of what happens with the spreadsheet. But then once this is all finalized, and this is why we were talking earlier and I was asking questions, David takes meticulous notes about what is where.
Yes.
Once it's finalized, then he will give us, Dina and I, the spreadsheet that has all of his meticulous notes within it.
Great.
This is just a PDF that does it. So we should be
Okay.
able to analyze
it
that spreadsheet with those notes, and that should clear it up.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa.
And there's the mundane answer of the internal controls. And when you get a bill from that Gorse company, Dina, as the bill payer, is going to be, where does this get categorized? And she's going to find the right line item, which will be that watershed grant money. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah, okay.
it's all the due diligence, but it is the basic programming of everything has its slot, and that's where the dots get connected,
Yeah.
if that helps at all.
Yeah, it does. And I'm sorry for asking rudimentary
No,
questions.
no, it's
but I'm
not.
kinda
It's
trying
not
to, like,
rudimentary at all.
There
Put the
are
whole
no
thing-
rudimentary questions.
the whole
in the
thing
budget
together, because I,
The only reason I know is because I categorize those little things that
Yeah.
work. So,
oh, and I know from the past, whatever, 6 months, that sometimes we don't know where is this coming or going.
Right.
And so it's useful.
Oh, what I was thinking about when you asked that question, if Dina would know where to put it. What I'm seeing is like with the email that you sent me, and you start talking about an SRF $100,000 and the SRF 10,000 and the SRF, they all the same. How is she going to figure that out?
Right.
Generally, when you get the award letter, it has a grant number. And that's really what should be doing here. This should be DEQ watershed grant U10, whatever their number is. And then Dina could actually get it there. I don't think it was thought of when this was originally done because, well, there was only one DEQ
Grant. Yeah.
grant, so it would be easy. But now we're starting talking about multiple out of the same
Agent.
revolving loan fund.
Yeah.
The confusion can happen real easy. So,
That's a good idea to maybe get those numbers added in at some point, or to be, talk to her about it, or get those numbers in. And
And I know as the new person coming in, it's like, is it a brick grant? Is it a block grant? Is it the other block grant? Is the other this, like they're hard to track.
and actually on this repayment schedule I have, it does list the loan number would be R74101. And I'll just see that that gets added to it.
That'd be super
Is
helpful.
is there a way to like put a letter behind each grant or do something that identifies it easier?
That's what he's saying.
That's
is
what he's saying with that
the number.
R7401. Like
Oh.
every lending agency assigns it their case number, for lack of a better term, and that's what will transfer over to the
I
budget.
got you, right. So we just haven't done that to this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had
There was
multiple,
just- Right.
from the same
Now we
funding
need to
source
start
yet.
Paying attention, yeah.
and these categories that are in here are just kind of more like, John Isidore saying, oh yeah, we got like a DEQ grant.
Mhm.
Well, there's this, state revolving fund, one of them, and another. So there's,
Mm,
it's kind of good to have the common name so we know what it's for, as well as that, but in the spreadsheet having, so work in progress.
Work in progress.
Get
We're
there.
figuring it out.
Figure out how to do it better.
That's all I have for comment on sewers, if there's any other questions.
Hearing no questions on our sewer enterprise fund, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that we agree to adopt the sewer enterprise fund portion of the budget.
I'll second that.
Gary seconded. Gary seconded.
Is there any other discussion on the sewer enterprise fund? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Corey,
Yes.
Randy, Ann,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Tim, yes. Okay, the sewer enterprise fund passes. Yes.
Could I ask a question about the CPI on those rate increases? That's a consumer price index you're talking about? And that's from the federal government, public, okay, is it for nationwide or is it specific?
I believe the one that David uses is the CPIU.
For our area though, it's.
Right, it's specific, there's like a W that's the west, but there's another one that's U, but I think it's the CPIU, correct?
It is, yeah, Consumer Price Urban Index.
The U stands for what?
Urban, actually, but is not, I know it's
That's
weird,
what they call
but
it.
they call, it's what
I
they
asked
call it.
about
We
that
do too,
It's
yeah.
like, that's not our index. We're not urban around
If
here.
it's the lowest one, we can sure get away with it.
Yes, it was the CPIU was that I used.
And that's from that's Oregon or that's federal, like just a
This
mix
one
of
here,
everybody?
I hate going through
I
these
know,
anymore.
yeah. Why can't they just call
No,
it a flat rate and then figure it out as a government? I mean, come on.
Thought that this one had narrowed it down by the western state.
Yeah.
I know there is one
But it
that's
doesn't
the
say
Western
on it.
Consumer Price Index. but-
Yeah. What's even worse is that the fire department uses the CPI West, the W.
Mhm.
So I printed it out this year and I looked at the historicals and last year they said it was 8%. Now they changed it and said it was only 7.4%. So that really makes you look good.
I know. You think those numbers would be.
Are the other ones in big difference if you go to the W or the other categories? Or is there a big difference between what we're using and those?
There are specific ones that are for like Los Angeles or San Francisco. I looked at the western ones, and so there are specific, Hawaii, they have specific ones because the cost of living is so much different.
That's the one
But
we should
basically,
use.
Just for the general one, I think the rural one would sound ideal, but it doesn't really have a rural one.
it does, I didn't find a rural
No.
one.
I specifically looked. when
Me
I was
too,
like-
'cause that's
we
where I
talked
would-
about the
yeah.
fire contract and it was like, wait a minute, why are we using the urban price index? Because it's the only one that's
the only one
available.
there.
and It's worded that way.
What's the general range of them? They give them in percents, do they?
3 to 8. Didn't we have 8% during?
Yeah,
during COVID?
yeah. I mean, the standard used to be like 3 to 5, and usually I thought it was around like 3.5 to 4-ish. But yeah, I guess there is no.
So yeah, usually you kind of, even thinking about negotiations or things, usually you think of cost of living adjustment, a COLA would like around 3%, but it does waffle between there. So usually it's 3 to 5% is usually, but there was a couple of years ago, it was 8%. And so, and what the council has done is voted in that without having to reopen it or to kind of negotiate, that each year they can increase without a motion, without any problem to keep up with the CPIU. And so this is just, that's why I said this is the standard change that it would be on any normal year, as opposed to the water, which we had to make different decisions.
It's a big, huge percent, so I was just kind of thinking we may get asked about that.
Mhm.
Of the three?
What does that percent calculate to?
3%. Wasn't it 3%?
You're looking at the water now rather than the sewer, because that's what we were
Yeah,
talking
I'm
about
sorry, yeah, I was
yesterday.
talking about
That was
that.
Oh, the water was,
Water.
yeah, the
Oh.
water's,
That last.
I had to go way back for that, yeah, sorry.
So
No, that's fine.
we forgot that was on Monday, right?
Yeah,
that
for
was the
Tuesday,
big
yeah.
Yeah.
discussion.
yeah.
No, but that one is not based off the CPI. That is a
What?
rate
Oh,
increase.
okay.
Yeah, so that percentage is.
Okay.
That's just what we need to make it work.
We hadn't raised it in 4 years though. So we took it, so we
That's a
hadn't
good
raised
point.
it during COVID and everything. That's what he's trying. We didn't raise it at all, so we were on shortfall now. So we raised it. It
And
seems like a
catch
huge
up.
jump, but we're pretty much exactly where we would if we would have just done the yearly increase.
That helps a lot.
So 369, it's approximately 9%.
And many cities did not raise it during COVID, just because there were so many folks out of work and stuff. And then it didn't get raised the second year. And I believe it didn't get raised the third year. I don't remember the fourth year.
So that was the
Those
reason.
most
it was
people, if they
catching up
wanna
to where
work,
we
they-
Should currently be, and that would get us, it looks like, on budget. You know what I mean?
That makes me feel a lot better, thank you.
Yeah,
It was a huge jump for all of us too.
nobody wants to do that, but
No,
it's what it's taking to balance that water fund. And there's no other place take money from.
Fortunately, the dollar figure isn't real high, so it's a little more palatable. Hundreds of
It was
dollars.
about a $20 increase per average user. Discussed at that meeting on
$20 per month?
Monday. $20.
And that was the average, that was 70% of the users. The other 30 are on the heavy consumption side, and their bills will go up $100 to $150. So a lot of your restaurants, motels, RV parks, stuff like that will go up because of the consumption side. And that's the $5 per block charge you see on that chart. Okay, so
Thank you.
why don't we move on to the sewer reserves fund? And that is on page 19 of 25.
Well, with this one, we talked about it in the last one, is that our reserves have been used to backfill for our sewer enterprise. And so there's not much to talk about in this one.
Can I just ask, why do we have like a transfer from sewer enterprise and a transfer to sewer enterprise?
So on your bills, the designated for reserves,
Mhm.
that's where this money comes from, the designated
Okay.
for water.
So it goes directly into the sewer enterprise, then you move it into the reserves, and then now we have to move it back. Got it. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
During the year, we accumulate that money, then next year, once we know how much it is, we transfer it to the,
Okay. Thank you.
Technically from the general fund to the sewer enterprise.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on the sewer reserve fund? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Greg?
I'll
I'm
move
sorry.
to approve the sewer
Yeah,
capital
sorry about
reserve.
that.
I'll second.
yeah, need more.
Okay. Any other discussion? I will call for the vote. Greg?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Tim, yes. The sewer reserve fund passed.
You can't just do it.
And now we are moving on to the streets fund, which is on page 20. And Melissa, do you have any notes on the streets fund?
So I have a couple lines on the streets fund.
I would like to note the irony of Councilor
Yeah,
walking in
yeah, I
during the
love it.
streets fund coming out.
Yeah, he knew it was coming.
Does he have?
Did you bring back your little binder that has all the stuff?
In my truck, I think. Better turn my ringer off. No, I was looking at it.
Here.
Did you have notes or do you want?
I'm sorry for being.
All right. No, you're all right. Joseph could bring you one too when he heads back this way. So street fund is on page 20, 21. It said, the notes are, not much work has been done with the streets with a proposed transfer from the general fund of $37,494. The streets fund is still $50,000 short of being balanced. And so on page 21, which is the capital, so the streets are on page 20, and that was line 6 that we're talking about so yeah, page 20, line 6, transfer from the general fund.
20 lines.
63, exactly. So with that transfer was changed to $37,494. The street fund is still $50,000 short of being balanced. And so if we look in the streets capital reserve fund, it had $55,000 in it. We needed to raid that from the capital reserve into the main fund. And then David says, I do anticipate that citations will be increased, which may leave some more money than in the general fund that can transfer into streets. But we need to get the other balance and the other funds balanced first. So David, were there other specific changes that you had in here? Was that it? Were there any other changes, or was that it? Just to
That's
move-
pretty much it. We just got the 20,000 transfer from the streets capital reserve and transferred 63,700 from the general fund to balance the street fund.
What's the contingency?
Just one thing that I point out is public works wages coming out of streets. One of the covets of receiving the state highway tax is that 10% goes for pedestrian. We meet that with public works mowing the side of the road or keeping that cleaned up. So that's one reason you see the payroll in the street funds, even though you don't see much activity in streets.
We used to, our meeting packets, when Terry was running the ship, would say that, you know, $9,000 was received from the state for this, and 8,700 and, 99 was spent for wages. And then, it was
$3 for a bag.
$3 went to the,
For a
you know,
bag
so
of asphalt.
it can be confusing how that all works out, but it is what it is. I think my crane fund's gonna get robbed at the port too here.
Yeah, it's a
Man.
tough year for reserve funds, but that's going to get made available. There is a little difference.
Slush fund.
Hey, you have a negative attitude. You have crane fund money that's going for 2 brand new cranes. Like, that's how it's supposed to work.
You're right.
So, David, real quick, we have a contingency money there on line 37. So is that part of what you said we were a shortfall of 37,000? So there's 32,000 there in contingencies. Are we not allowed to use that, or?
So
You are allowed.
So,
Complete the reserve? I'm just saying, so we don't have to complete the reserves. I'm just asking.
well, it's all in contingency, and if you'll remember what I'm been doing is moving some money up in case the union negotiation or whatever, that there's some money left.
Because if it's in the reserve instead of the contingency, then you can't use it this budget cycle. No, I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's the,
I saw different amounts of money, so I just want to make sure. We're good. Awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's because we did talk about that before, and so that's why you were confused. So, yeah, so that's what he's tried to do, because if you remember, we have not had, our union negotiations have not finalized, and we have some things up in the air about that of being able to have past roll-up costs or past costs that we're going to have to pay back. And so he's trying to put those in these funds all the way across, so that when that comes due, we have a way to pay it out of these different places.
So is there a target percentage for the contingency for each fund for that purpose? Is it, 1%, 10%, that 30? Across the board, every fund has a contingency for that possibility of the union or whatever.
Right.
Are each of them based on something, or is it just voodoo? Or you pull it out of your head, but I'd like to just kind of know. You're going to be gone here. How do you do that?
We don't have hard numbers. We're not going to be out trying to guess or try to politicize the union negotiations. So we're just trying to put enough to cover our rears.
Okay. All right. That's good enough. Thanks, Dave.
And back to Greg's question, sometimes when Melissa's given her summary of what we did, It sounds like we're still short in what we're looking at, but we're really not. She's telling where we were at and what steps we took to get to where we're at. So, and I just kind of, when you're talking about that, I turn it off because I know that.
That's exactly what I
But
was
I
asking.
know.
Yeah, because
you're
we've been
trying
in
to
the, we've been in
educate.
the, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
10 to
Yeah.
15%.
So,
Which I've really appreciated because again, this is what David has done as he's made these
Yep.
moves in each thing is he's actually changing information based on the multiple finance committee meetings we've had of the things that he's actually changing and actually doing of it was this, then we made this move. And so it's now with this, and then we make this move. That has helped me go through it again too. So, yeah. hmm
It's real low hanging fruit for them to watch. Like they want to see your 4 items and the transfers that you do on the budget as far as the auditors. It seems like to show the transfers is most of the reasons for the budget. in a way.
exactly. So if nobody has questions on the street fund, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to pass the street fund.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And is there any more discussion on the street fund?
Mm, Nope.
I mean,
That's Corey.
Corey?
I remember last year, John was talking about equipment, trucks and things. Is that in the next? Do we have enough for the equipment? I remember he was putting some stuff together to keep certain trucks running.
He's having difficulties with a back-on truck. We continue to repair that until we can replace it. But no, we don't have enough money yet to replace it because those trucks are used probably a little over $250,000 and new. They probably start out at between 400,000 and 500,000 and go up. So it's an expensive piece of equipment. So the piece of equipment he's been using has been working. And I think it just got welded and I think it's just getting ready to have some more work done to it too. But that's where we're at with that piece of equipment. It's,
Things like welding though, are we not, do we not have the in-house?
Not like that. No,
Capacity
there's a
to
lot of
weld?
leaks in the back truck, like to find all the vacuum leaks in that big vacuum, there's a lot.
Well, I mean, you pressurize the tank is what you would do is you'd pressurize into it and put a dyed, like a colorant of some sort. And then
I doubt that those are certified welders.
do we have to have a certified welder? I mean, I'm just wondering, like, I need things welded often and I weld them.
Yeah.
And
Sure, individual.
I'm just wondering if we
may have,
I think that we're going into new territory with our budget and things that maybe we wouldn't have considered in the past.
Yeah.
Really need to be,
considered.
That truck's in the water fund though, right? Or is it in
Uh,
the road?
both.
I think we're going into the equipment.
Oh, okay.
It's, yeah, but
Okay.
In the next,
It's in the next one. Got it. Okay.
all right.
it's used for water currently because of the water leaks or the leaky tank. But I think Brett's pretty much onto something. I mean, if we were to trade that piece of equipment in on, let's say, another used piece that had been refurbed, they're going to refurb it and they're going to sell it to the next city. Or we can turn it into them and have them refurb it for us. But then we're without a back-on truck for the duration of that time. But that is something to look at because, it's a big truck. It's got a strong motor and a good transmission and it's just got some quirks that need to be sorted out.
My shop's big enough to back it in and my welder's good enough to weld on it. Just throwing it out there.
That's
We'll talk to
That's
John
kind of the way I think too. And, we might have a couple new employees coming on board in the future and maybe they might have those kind of skills too. So,
I think that maybe our capacity to take on those jobs is limited due to being short-staffed, chasing
Correct.
down leaks,
Yeah.
This and that.
for sure.
I wouldn't even suggest that, why didn't they do that? But I'm saying maybe we
Right.
should consider.
And just so you know, we had interviews this morning and we have one more interview tomorrow for the maintenance worker and to see if and we still have the water operator job open. So we're trying to get that back up to capacity to the point of now we're getting towards the end of, we're at the interview stage. And so I'll be calling references and talking to people and getting it figured out. We're trying to get that hired as soon as possible so that we can then start having more of these more creative ideas to do it in-house, and not in emergency situations.
Right.
A lot of the time.
Right.
Any other questions on the street fund? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Corey,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Brett,
Webb, yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Greg? Tim, yes. So the street fund has passed. Now we'll be moving on to the streets reserve fund on page 21.
And this is where the approximately $55,000 was moved from the streets capital reserve fund into the regular street fund to balance that. So that's the 20,000 on line 4.
And then we have an unappropriated reserve for future expenses of 38,387 on line 5. So are there any questions on this fund? Hearing no questions, I would entertain a motion on the streets capital improvement fund.
I will move to approve the streets capital improvement proposed budget for 2004 to 24-25.
Second.
Okay, do we have any comments on this street capital fund after the
That
motion?
took a long time to come up with that 60 grand. Man.
It's just available for contingency, so I'm sure it'll be there by next year.
Oh, yeah, I'm confident as well.
Okay,
It's the first time I've seconded one of your motions.
There's no contingency in these funds. Is that because it's
Mm-mm.
the capital reserves don't have contingencies?
Which one's this?
The capital, these capital
You have it? Isn't it?
contingency reserves, there's
Isn't that down below? There's,
Nothing's.
I thought I saw.
Legitimate, like, yeah.
reserves, but it's not like,
David, Ann has asked about
it's under-
why there is
Yeah,
no
I think that's the
contingency in this particular fund. It's the street capitals
It's a
improvement.
reserve fund.
Pardon me?
We don't
there's no,
spend out of the
reserve fund,
reserve
there's no-
fund. Reserve
Right.
funds
Well, because there's no
transfers to his.
prescribed use,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Because you're not doing any fiscal activity out of
Did-
it, other than a transfer.
You just use different terminology to say the same thing.
That's how I always do things.
Okay. So I guess if there's no other questions on the streets capital improvement fund, David, did you have anything to add to that before we move on?
No.
Okay, I will call for the vote. Greg? Gary?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Brett?
Webb, yes.
Ann?
yes.
Randy? And
Yes.
Corey? Tim, yes. Okay, the streets capital improvement fund has passed.
One thing you're gonna need to keep in mind is we're moving the police department away from writing citations, and citations is the funding for the streets capital reserve, so we need to start finding another funding source.
That is a good point. Okay, so here we are at the equipment replacement fund. And I don't know if Melissa had any notes, but I'll let
I
David
think
start.
she said she was going to get them.
Okay,
No, she said she didn't have any more notes actually
Oh.
on this. She does not have any more notes.
Nothing was, the equipment replacement fund is where the water and sewer enterprise accumulates the money to buy the equipment for those two funds. Currently has 152,000 in it. Public Works Superintendent said it was nowhere near enough for what he wants to buy, so we left it in the reserve for future expenditures and no expenditures coming out of that fund. Any questions on the equipment replacement fund?
It's well, in the unappropriated reserve, there's 152, 218. And that's that, where that equipment that,
He said nowhere near, huh?
Yeah, you want 600,000.
To buy a new back HVAC or
Back
So I probably don't even know if I'd say it, but
buy a whole bunch of welding rod with $600,000.
I guess,
I mean, it just, you buy a whole lot of 4-inch trash pumps for that too. Well, I mean, this is the only number we have that's flexible, I guess I'm saying. If we've already accepted all the other funds, so I guess it's not even really part of the thing. But when we do get to the general fund, if there are any questions, this is the only spot I see any wiggle room, which we don't have. And any money taken out of there will pretty much kill all the momentum for that piece of equipment. But I'm trying to be real, and I'm trying to see that we're bleeding here. And so are we going to be rat and holing 100,000 away for this in the next 5 years? Like, I don't, I'm just saying that might be a little bit of money to wiggle, not to take away from that equipment fund, but $500,000 left is a lot of money to plan for when we're doing the things that we're doing.
So it could transfer to the general fund.
I mean,
The general fund can transfer to any fund it wants to.
But this 152,000, can it transfer to the,
No, it belongs to the streets.
okay.
oh, okay. So it's not
But-
wiggle room.
No,
Well,
no, I'm sorry, I was thinking of the prior one. It belongs to water and sewer. The
So-
equipment replacement fund.
The wiggle would be,
Oh,
it looks like we're taking 20,000 from the two enterprise funds. So if we wanted to not take that money, if we wanted to not keep building that would be a little wiggle, but, right? Maybe that's what you're referring to.
can this money be used to lessen the blow on the water rates?
I was hoping somebody would get there. I didn't want to be the one.
I'm
I didn't want to be the one to ask Dave that.
gonna struggle with
I don't know the answer.
supporting that.
The reason being is half came from water and half came
Right.
from sewer.
Yeah.
That's where I'm hung up on answering.
Yeah. And I'm not even, I just asked the question. I'm obviously the bad guy, but
What was that total, that annual total increase with the $12 or the
208?
you know,
was it that much?
Are you talking about with this?
How much?
this
Yeah, there
document?
you go.
the proposed increase or
Those
the,
are they.
But the actual lump sum, I think, is what he's asking
Oh.
for.
yeah, at the end of year's end, what does that?
203,000.
Yeah, it's for,
talking about water.
Yeah, well,
I know that,
Right then,
I just looked at my file
Uh-huh.
and my notes, and I see a schedule water enterprise fund proposed increase for 2023
Mhm.
that I thought we voted on last year. Did that just not get implemented?
that supposedly got implemented. I asked
So
that
then we
question.
have had increases
Yeah,
since COVID
yeah, we have.
on water.
Last year was the first increase, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Okay, so then stating that we haven't had increases in the water bill.
3 years we didn't have it.
Oh, okay, but we
Yeah.
did have one last year.
Yes, we
Okay,
did.
so I'm
Yes.
not
it was the COVID
Not
years.
totally
Correct.
plus-
crazy.
We typically, so my history on city council is we typically do have an increase every year.
Uh-huh.
There's one year I could recall,
Yep.
the
I said,
the water fund had, it had quite a bit of money left in it at the end of the day when we came to this.
Hard to believe, but
Right, yeah, it was. And
shouldn't
I
be.
believe Caroline
it was,
and myself and a couple other counselors, I think Brett, decided we would not have a water increase that year. So the
It was
increase.
because Social Security, so
Right.
that's what I look at. I
Yeah.
look at what do my constituent, what was their raise?
Right.
And if what,
It was probably
We're within-
2% that year or something.
yeah, and we were asking for six
Yeah.
or some weird,
We did.
so that's always like,
And then we.
you know, my compass tends to be that, what does that 70-year-old woman try to pay her bills with?
Yeah.
And not to, could somebody construe that as ageism or sexism or anything? If you did, forget it.
I don't take offense to that. I know.
Well, there's,
some-
it's not only the people at 70, older people, people, it's a lot of people just are
Right.
not
No,
making a lot of money.
fixed income.
Yeah.
Let me,
I think you could say it
those
that way.
who are on fixed
There it
income.
is. There you go.
CoStar, yeah.
There you go.
And with inflation and.
And even low incomes,
Yeah, right. Which is most.
right in the same bracket.
Okay, so on the equipment replacement fund, David explained it, and are there any other questions on that fund?
So
Yes.
this capital outlays to service a vehicle, I mean, it's a zero?
So which line item are you?
Service vehicle, not to service a vehicle.
Oh, okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It's like, wait.
You better put gas in it.
We got this.
Wait, what?
Vehicle.
Oh,
Thanks.
And it sounds like we're getting closer to being able to better service the vehicles because of building that department back up. There's a lot of talk about that today, so.
So it won't need to be replaced as anticipated during the current budget year? That 40,000 for the service vehicle?
Because we just bought one 2 years ago? Or was it last year?
I can't remember what year it was. It's the one with the service box, I think, wasn't it?
we bought couple pickups one year.
Yeah.
And they,
So that was good.
oh yeah, I remember
Well-
that. They wanted
Yeah.
gasoline engines.
But my question is.
That was a big,
have
that was a
the
big
bills-
discussion.
Have the bills
That was a big
come in for that yet? Is it gonna come out of last year's that was?
So it's all
budgeted for?
budget
This one.
in resources. I was just trying to refresh.
I guess that's what I'm saying is, oh, that's right. So this just pushed forward from this current year to this one.
Total.
Okay.
Yeah, 6.1 or
Dina asked me the other day. I was like, look,
So that, the proposal of that that vac truck would be 10% of our annual budget, roughly.
Oh, the proposed, the 600, you're talking
Yeah,
600,000.
proposed, yeah, I was
Yeah,
just.
right. Okay, I was still thinking, for some reason, I have my mind wrapped around the 152.
Price tag of 6.
Yeah, it's
We got to
expensive.
change our
New
thinking.
one?
I think
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what
for
we need
sure.
to do is just change our thinking. Because a lot of us, we think the government's got money, and we're just gonna get things done and stuff. Well,
we're kind of a Dodge Dart kind of place.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know, Dodge Darts are worth a lot these
They
days.
are, they are, just because nobody liked it back in the day.
10 grand.
I know. I'm trying to think of a vehicle.
Kind of in a golf cart stage.
Yeah, and a poor condition golf cart, because they're way up too.
What are the ones with the
See, but
pedals?
there's a way that works, is we're the body that says, we are tight, we can't afford this. And you're the person that says, hey, staff, we need to think of ways to do this. And there are different ways to do it, but we're not the people that should be telling them, how they need to make cuts, but we have to tell them that we might not be able to afford a damn vac truck for.
Well, I
That's
think
what
that
they understand that.
there's some disconnect if you have a public works head communicating with, I don't know how mechanically inclined you are. And then you, who have a long experience with machines and pumps and,
Tell that
you know what I mean? And
I have to keep my mouth
you gotta
shut.
keep your mouth shut, but
Please go in the green room.
that doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve him. It doesn't serve anybody if we're foregoing our knowledge and our strengths.
Right.
Because Lord knows we display our weaknesses all the time.
Yeah, that's
You
a
know,
good point.
so,
That's a good point.
um,
Well, yeah, and that's just under that line of thinking. I've always had a bone to pick with the vac truck, well before we had budgetary constraints because of that, huh?
Couple of pumps.
It'll be the largest piece of equipment that we've bought in the 15 years I've been here.
The
So
guy needs one. The thing of it is, if it fails, what did we do? Borrow one from ODOT once or something?
I remember we did borrow one, maybe when we had one serviced or something, didn't we? Somebody loaned us a backhaul truck.
And
for-
that's those are the other angles you can look at, is some sort of interagency agreement with ODOT or the county for when you really needed it, or it was an emergency, and then you limp along in some other ways when you don't.
I'm all for remand stuff myself, but I'm an old school guy. I like old stuff. I prefer old stuff and bringing it back to life. And I'm not even
The fire
saying,
department just got a brand new stainless steel tank put on their tender, and I think it was like, do you remember how much that was? It wasn't that expensive, was it? Was it like 60 grand?
60 grand?
I'm way off, huh?
Oh, I don't know. I
Oh.
didn't see it.
I just remember when they got that 6-wheeled big
Water tank.
army machine, they got a tank put on it, a stainless tank, but maybe it was way more.
There's
I don't remember how much the tank.
government options. It doesn't need to be stainless for that measure though, for that purpose.
180,000 for the whole
Right?
retro.
Stainless
Oh,
is heavy
yeah,
and
that makes
brittle.
sense.
Hey, you guys, can we get back on
Oh,
track?
sorry.
yep, let's get on track.
I have one more question on this to get us
Yes.
back on track. I mean, because we're talking about this equipment replacement fund, and I know we're talking about equipment, but that piece of equipment is not being proposed. It's sort of hanging out there, which is why we're talking about it. But, since we have had this like pain about the water rate increase, I just do want to follow up on what Tim said. If we left the $10,000 in the water fund, it just doesn't do anything for the rate increase, because the rate increase is more like $100,000, right? So there's no reason to consider leaving that money in the water fund instead of moving it, is there? That's my only question. That won't do anything for us to not with rates, because it's just like a small amount, right?
Did,
You know what
oh,
I'm,
the 20, yeah, the 20's not going to make an effect on.
it's not going to move the dial. So, okay, I just wanted to turn that stone,
Mm-hmm.
and having turned it, then I'm
No,
okay with this.
because I was asking like if we took 50 out of this fund, 50 might do something. I don't know. David knows, he's got the numbers in his head and I could see him already thinking about
But
it.
I don't think we could take 50, but here, since we're transferring it from the water, I don't think we could take this money and move it somewhere else, or maybe we could have, but since we're transferring it from water enterprise to here, that's all I was wondering about, if we left
So-
those.
I was going to make a comment on that, but
Yeah.
since you brought it up, I'll comment now.
Yeah.
Line 3 and 4, the transfer from water enterprise and the transfer from sewer enterprise, we canceled those in the water and sewer enterprise funds. Need to cancel them in this fund, so line 3 and line 4 would be 0.
Okay.
And the new total will be 132,218.
Okay.
And it'd be the same for the reserve for future expenditure,
Okay,
132,218.
Okay.
we'd
So you already did it.
done that.
You already,
Okay.
Well, good for
Yeah.
you.
already
Doing
wrung that stone out.
Good for you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we have 132,218 in the equipment replacement fund. And David had been pretty good about trying to move about 10 grand a year out of each fund into this fund to get us to where we're at now.
Got it. That
It's
helps
taken
me.
years
Yeah.
to get there. So
Well, and the other piece about this I would just raise is, since we are in the spirit of trying to find grants, maybe what we really need to be doing is looking for a grant and then use this money for the match or something, instead of like trying to get, and I don't know if there are grants for equipment, but
But-
maybe there are.
there's grants and there's agencies that are willing sometimes to donate their older equipment to you, and it may be better than our older equipment. That's all. I'll just throw that out there.
Government surplus.
We really have gotten good deals with government surplus.
Yeah, the county gave us a dump truck one year, as a matter of fact. So,
You know what really have started seeing, used to be before you would see a lot of agencies giving their older
Mhm.
equipment and you get some good equipment that way.
Mhm.
Now they come out with the surplus auctions and whatnot, and most of the cities are ending up auctioning off their equipment instead of passing it down.
And sometimes you can get a good deal on that. It just depends on who's watching and when that timeline comes up. My son watches those auctions and you can pick up equipment
There's
pennies
a
on the
yard in Salem.
dollar
There's
sometimes.
a yard in Salem that has some pretty good stuff in it. The port,
Yep.
in the past, it's been a long time since we've been up there, but they got everything from leather boots to cranes and tractors and stuff, you know?
So I'm going to write that down on my finance committee notes because that is, that's two things to look at, grants and perhaps,
Well, and when you're looking at procurement, it doesn't have to be a truck. It could be a trailer.
it could.
You know,
You're absolutely right.
So a quick little Google search of these vacuum trucks, government search.
Mhm.
There's a really nice one here in Oregon for less than $90,000.
Hmm.
I'm saying, they're out there.
Yeah.
You could use this money.
Yeah.
That one looks pretty nice too.
It looks amazing. I'm
Huh.
just saying, there's more than just that. Just one little quick search.
Can you say, is this sold yet?
Like I said, you could, you know what I mean, there's money.
Oh,
You could
sure.
use that.
Can you send that link to me and I will give that to
Well,
John or send it to
No, but
John?
that's like,
With
this
that
is
in mind-
another product of being undermanned so
Yeah.
that you can't focus on these finer tooth things.
Right.
Because you're literally putting out fires or avoiding
Is that what I've
fires.
been doing?
Yeah, not you.
Is
as
that
fire.
Salem?
Oh.
Is that government?
You're fine.
Is that Salem?
In Portland.
Or, yeah, so there's a few yards too.
So we have
Okay.
we have a really good backcon truck, by the way, as far as it's a big, good
Yes.
backcon truck because they make them smaller that do a little bit less stuff, but
Because most
Yeah.
people don't use
So it's the
them to
tank that's the
excavate.
problem?
They use them to locate
the,
the
Well, engine.
They use
It's, the whole thing is organic. I remember when they were trying to get parts for the engine 2 years ago, and that was itself pretty crazy.
I'd have to research that truck and I've got it on my notes and I will because I know a little bit about maintenance and those kinds of things, to be honest with you. So if it's got a PACCAR motor in it, they're still building and available. I don't know what it's got in, but I'll find out.
They make an engine?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I assumed it would have been one of the big three, you know?
Yeah. No, they make, a lot of, these newer trucks are using those. So.
It's not
Okay,
just.
well, Let's keep it moving, you
Sorry,
guys.
sorry.
You guys just like to talk about equipment. I gotta tell you.
Tonka, we're in the Tonka
Okay.
section.
Call you
So-
on
I
it.
get it.
Hearing more comments and no questions, I'm going to entertain a motion for the equipment replacement fund while it's still at 132, 218.
I'll move to accept the equipment.
If we have to worry about that 40,000 disappearing for that service truck.
It didn't disappear. It just didn't get
Didn't get spent.
budgeted.
It got rolled in, it got rolled back in.
It's the money that was appropriated last year to be spent this year.
Yeah.
But there's no plan to spend it, so
Okay. So we
it
don't
just
need
goes
to-
back into the cash forward.
We do, but we don't have enough money for it, so we're
We're not
not
gonna
gonna
get
do
it.
it.
Right.
We're
It
not
was,
gonna
it was
get
like we planned for it last year. It didn't work out, so it's going back into grocery money.
Listed in the budget.
There's sort of the ask.
But I would like to
Some-
point out that this fund is funded by transfers from the water and sewer. And for this year, we pulled back the 10,000 from each fund just so prevent water from going in a negative.
Yeah.
And we're not making the transfer this year. That's $40,000 this fund is short already.
Yeah.
It should be basically at 175,000 instead of 132.
Yeah, and David, I have to just say, I always appreciate in your budgets that you have, kept squirreling things away and planning for the future. That's a really wonderful thing you've been able to do for us. So I'm sorry we got off track, but we'll get there. We'll get back on somehow.
So I have a motion on the table and I don't believe I heard the second.
I'll second it.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion and a second. And unless we have any other discussion, I hate to ever cut somebody off on discussion the second time around, but I think we pretty much discussed all this till we can't do it
Then
anymore.
you have a beer over it after.
There you go.
That's the next.
So I will call for the vote. Corey,
Yes?
Randy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Brett,
Webb, yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Greg,
Rebooting there for a second.
Tim, yes. Okay, so the equipment replacement fund has passed. And
He doesn't get a vote.
We have 2 more funds left and we have about 15 minutes.
Hold on.
Initially moved to.
Pardon me?
Shouldn't take long.
Gary did, I think. You did the initial motion on the equipment fund?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we're on to the water SDC fund and that's page 23 of 25. And I'm going to let, unless Melissa has notes.
I have no notes.
Okay, so I'm going to let
Freewheeling.
David explain the SDC fund and why there's so much in that fund. And so everybody can grasp that again, because we all struggle with the SDC funds. You know, can we use that for this? Can we use it for that? And David, I think, can explain it to us.
Okay, the water SDC fund is based on what's called an improvement SDC fund. There's 2 types of SDCs, an improvement and reimbursement. The water is 100% improvement and the money can only be used on that part of the infrastructure that increases the capacity of the system. So if you put in a larger pipe that increased your capacity 30%, you could use 30% of the cost of that project from the water SDC funds. On the other side of that, the reimbursement fee, which we'll see in the sewer fund, it can be used for repairs and maintenance if you want. It doesn't have to be used for improvements. So that's kind of the difference between the water SDC is all improvement fees, since at the time that did the study, there was no extra capacity in the water system. So that's where they come up with it.
Now, would a water tank, a new water tank be an improvement?
If it improves the capacity of the system.
So,
That would be
Yes,
increasing the capacity.
yes.
so then the Coast Guard Hill $200,000 expense that's underwater, could that be taken out of here?
Not unless the whole hillside gets repiped, because that's just for a pump station.
But if we increase.
But it increases
pump
the
station
capacity, doesn't it?
capacity,
Even 10 gallons.
Yeah,
Yes, if
so why not?
there, I would put that question to the engineer,
Okay.
to what percentage does this new pump station increase the capacity?
Melissa, this is a very good question for you because we need to know what the capacity, the pump station is going to change the percentage of the pumping. Because I remember the way John explained it, this was supposed to pump at a much faster, some insane rate.
That would definitely improve.
That'd give us a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Before you do that,
No, it
I-
would give us 20,000. I mean,
have-
it would give us the percentage of the increase.
That's 60,000 if it's 30%.
Right.
of
No, that'd be
200,000,
great. It's just a numbers thing. That's awesome. However much it increases.
and one thing though to say is that we already, Pat, I'll just tell you this, we already, we have to, if we get the brick grant, we need a big chunk of money to match it. And so Pat wrote a letter saying that some of this money
Okay.
could go to pay for that, which was increasing, that was the new water distribution lines, some of which are upgrades. So anyway, we can't,
Made a point of making sure they were bigger.
we
For
couldn't
that
totally,
reason.
we
Right,
can't
I
totally
understand.
rob this is the bottom line.
I completely understand and that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
60,000 of that 500,000.
Might be okay.
Seems doable.
That could be, yeah.
And then going, if we're thinking that way, the engineering costs that we had was 300 and some odd thousand to get the shovel ready. Can that also be considered improvement or no?
This is,
Did it increase the capacity of the system?
but doesn't it have to be,
It doesn't, yeah, that's just general, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, and we need to get the numbers of the actual increase. Like to
Absolutely.
see, because I mean, you can only force so much water through a pipe regardless of how hard you're pushing on it. So I don't want to get all excited with the percentages till I know how much it really is upsizing it.
Exactly.
And when is that going to happen, by the way?
It's budgeted for.
What did he say last month? They're looking at the electrical. I mean, it should be.
So it will happen this year. I just so often there's a project that's in the budget and it doesn't
So
Right.
happen.
That one's been there for a while.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you could, if you're just saying it and it's not going to happen, then I don't know.
Well,
Well,
but it
that's-
is, but
And don't
It's
say
teed
it.
up. It's teed up, and if it doesn't happen,
Stop
it's
saying
just
it.
going to cost thousands of dollars to make it wait till the next year. But
there were a few things that John said, these are I had him prioritize, like, these are the projects we have to get done. Like if it came down to what do we need to get done, and that was one of the main ones. And so that's my understanding and that's my expectation, is that that's
We're gonna get that one done.
that there are,
that's when it gets weird because of the proportionate, and that's when you start thinking about the charges for the pump houses up the hill. Like
Right, I
all
don't
of our
get that.
reserve money is comparatively what we're putting for Coast Guard Hill.
Well, that's the reason I had David explain this fund to everybody, and I end up being the guy want to take money out of it. So, and I do understand it a little bit.
Now,
so.
one thing,
So I'd like to expand on the answer to Corey's question, because and that brick grant was engineering. The way it normally would treat the engineering is it's part of the project. So if that project would come to light, the engineering would have been added to that project for the total cost. And then you could take the SDC money on that total cost by the percentage it increased. So you get some of the engineering paid for, but it's just not a straightforward
And
answer.
like if we get that, let's hope we do,
Yeah.
those engineering costs are part of our match. So we have a 10% match.
Mhm.
And so that's going to be part of it too. So
Okay.
that we had to pay it up front.
Do we know the figure, do we have a ballpark figure on that, what it's going to cost as far as
The match.
how much, we would have to take out of here?
700,000.
Well, the ballpark match is like 700,000.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
what I
have.
thought. I thought you were
papers.
going to give me a better answer.
I have it in my files. We kind of went through, because don't forget the other thing that Joseph, I'll just give the shout out to Joseph, who also had to go through and figure out which houses on those lines had paid SDC fees.
Mhm.
Because that's the other thing, I think, David, is like, you can't just say, oh, SDC fees that everybody's paid, we'll pay it over here. It has to be for the very specific houses that paid in. The improvements have to be for those specific
Really
areas, right?
complicated.
That's my
Isn't
understanding.
it all?
On
Same?
reimbursement.
I mean,
Yeah.
because old houses didn't pay when they,
I don't know. That's just what my understanding is.
when did SDC fees begin?
I'm sure the city, when they first started, were begging people to come onto the system, to be
Right.
honest with you.
Right.
So I think you're right.
Everybody would have wells.
Yeah, I think you're right, probably. Do you know, David, when the SDC fees started at our city, in our city? Have they always been there?
I
or-
kind of feel like
No, they
Joseph and I were just looking
started
at some old documents, like
2003,
2005.
I think it is.
Okay.
I kind of feel like it was in that book we were just looking at for the initial loan, like in the 2000s.
Yeah, that's what he was saying, so.
I think we were charging for connection before that, but it wasn't an SDC charge.
Correct.
So I don't know if that would change whether or not we could spend that money, because I know I have cards that go back to like the 50s, 60s, 70s. That's this person, handwritten, this person paid $300 to connect to our water system, signed by the mayor and the city administrator at the time. So that's all the paperwork we have, but
Mhm.
it shows that, that house paid to connect to water and sewer. It just wasn't necessarily an SDC,
fee.
because I don't think that's what they called it back then.
Correct.
Mary Yoder.
It was
So
in pencil too. I can tell you that was written in
Go
pencil,
ahead, Corey.
Some of them were, and it made it really hard to read.
and it cost me a bunch of money.
my second part of this question is, if a portion of this SDC fund is to reimburse repairs and materials for the sewer. I don't know if it's sewer and water lines.
We're on water
We're on
right
water
now.
right now.
One
Water,
SDC
okay.
is water
So
one.
on water, so we're on water. And then transfer to water enterprise, I see is 0. So every time the water lines break and our personnel go out and fix it, that's time, that's money, that's substantial money, because how many breaks do we have each year? 30% of that should be coming out of here, shouldn't it?
It would
They're
have
just
to be,
repairing though. It's repair and maintenance.
But
They're
I
not
thought there was a
upsizing.
reimbursement for sewer, for repairs and materials
In the
in this
sewer,
SDC fund, the way that I thought you explained it.
not in the
But-
water.
By state law, you can only use it for improvements. And if repairing the leak does not increase the capacity, you can't use it.
I could sure argue that one all night long.
Yeah.
Because if the pipe's broken and nobody's getting nothing down there, then when you put a new pipe in, you're increasing the capacity.
I mean,
I like
From
that.
0 to,
I like that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, if
Well,
it's
but zero
reimbursement
makes
for
it
repairs,
It's
Yeah.
not in the water line. He said in the sewer line, it can be reimbursement for repairs, but in the water SDC, it's just for improvement.
it's just,
Yeah, I think, yeah, and I
I
was
think there was
hoping-
two, he's kind of said it all together, but I think
Yeah.
it's separate.
I was hoping he was just going to give us the water, and then I was going to ask him the same question in the sewer, because it is different in the sewer. And when we get to sewer, I'm going to have him remind us, but in water, it's 100% improvement. So you'd have to take a 4-inch line and take it to an 8-inch line.
What it is?
And then,
and then it's only a 20-foot piece. It's,
I was thinking
But
just add
haven't
in.
a
it
lot
costs
of
more to
them
keep track of.
I mean, I remember talking to John when we had a break on Jackson, and he says, we've installed all these new lines, which is increasing the flow of water. If it was a small pipe, and now it's a pipe that's 4 inches, doesn't that increase the water flow?
It's only for that 20-foot section that they replaced. So
But-
the actual
But it's
cost,
the time and the cost, a lot of the costs are,
but then there's all the time to figure out how much, and then it's
But-
only a percentage.
And the whole goal of this type of thing, if you go back to the beginning, is it's designed so that we build out in the future, that everybody pays into it for kind of like the equipment replacement fee. So when there's an opportunity to do this, that everybody's paid in, or like along Dee Street, people have paid in and we haven't put the line out fully there yet. Like it's for bigger things is what the goal is, which is why there's these state laws. I mean, I was trying to get to scrape for the money on this for what I was talking about, the match, and tried to delve into it and sort it out. And it's pretty constrained.
it is, our hands are tied with the state.
Do
on it.
we set that rate? Yes.
The SDC rate?
Yeah.
Yeah, we increase it
So
annually.
we could diversify that and have actually 2 funds, if need be, just an idea. One, you could put some of that away into that fund, and then you could have some that's actually liquid that you could work from.
I mean,
If-
like add a new fund, like a water, make.
Well, say-
We already have it.
Say it's 10 grand to sign up or something, and that's our SDC sign. That's what it costs, 10 grand.
We have that. We could put it
So
in the
we can-
reserve, the water reserve fund, and we can use it for whatever we want. That's what we created that fund for about 10 years, 11, 12 years ago. We created that fund for replacement cost of pipe.
But that money comes from the general budget,
Yeah.
the general fund.
Yes, that's.
So yeah, so what I'm suggesting is on the SDCs, if we just call it SDC / and then the is,
You'd have to call it something else,
Better than
basically,
that?
because SDC is, I think, a state law, but you could call it a,
It's
you know,
state
Port Orford
regulated as far
Improvement
as-
Fund.
well, because we set the rate, it could be the same. You could call it SDC, still the SDC. It could be SDC and this. And it could cost the same to somebody who was signing on, but it could create a fund that otherwise isn't really, when you look at the balance, and it's, what is it, $500,000 or something? That doesn't buy PVC from here to the highway. And we know that we're gonna need $90 million.
Yeah,
to do the-
and another thing, I put that on there, let's look at that extra fund. The thing we talked about last summer when we were talking about the well things is that somebody paid their SDC fee 20 years ago and they paid $500 and now it's
Oh.
more. And so what we really need to do is add an ordinance that says if you don't build within
Uh-huh.
4 years, then you're going to have to pay the
Okay.
Current.
the
We're
current
getting-
rate.
We're getting off.
As
But
far
I
as
put it
this
on the list.
SDC money
Very
though,
good. Thank you.
think about this SDC money. I'm a new person. I moved to town. I pay my SDC. I want that money to be protected. I don't want you to put it into your general fund and put it into equipment or this or that. I want the money that I paid, my buy-in to this system to be somewhat protected, and that's why it's protected in the way it is.
Well, it can
And it's
still
for
be-
And on our
development.
side of the street,
That's
what
what
we
we said
do
to
is
me.
we plan projects that upsize and then we make that money available. Like we have snapshots that we can do this. We just have to get our ducks in a row.
We do. That's what we need to do is
We
get
are-
better about upsizing, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
We don't even have to extend outside the city limits. We just need to be better about upsizing.
Well, and that's why I think like if we do this brick grant or if we don't get the brick grant and we use that's exactly the kind of thing that, that we can use it for. And so,
Which is as easy as if we have any sewer improvements, make damn sure that we're upsizing or doing the things that make the SDC money available.
yeah,
And-
you,
and
like you
there-
said, Pat, just go from like 4 inches to 6 inches, or even if it's just like a little thing.
Sewer is
It's their numbers game,
Right.
yeah.
just the sewer.
Clearly says that in this thing, that you can use it for that, the system development charges, the brief.
But it has to be 100% larger.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It has to be 100%
To
larger.
Isn't that
use
what you said?
100%
100% improvements.
For,
You know, I use 4 to 8 as an example.
oh, I thought that was literal.
No, if you went, say, 2 to 3, you can only do that percentage of increase on the line. And there's a whole calculation, right, David? Yes. So it can be any percentage, but you can't put in a 1 inch to a 1.5 inch line and claim a 30% increase because that's not 30%.
Actually, I think it would be, wouldn't it?
No, it is, but he.
I tried to get those numbers down. I know what you're thinking. I tried to get the numbers down so low that I would think it wouldn't be 30%, but yeah, technically.
I knew so I was gonna catch it. I don't want to do that.
Thank you,
That was 30%.
Math guys.
Okay.
And this is, have you guys that have been through budget cycles ever not had a conversation about SDCs when we get to this?
Well, that's why I asked.
Always.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that in the past, I had floated the ideas to stimulate growth.
Mhm.
Some pretty interesting ideas that I appreciated, but it was prior to the short-term rental, nationwide short-term rental problems, and it was, if you build new and you are the primary occupant of a home for 10 years, then that's offset. You somehow offset that cost of the SDC, but I don't even know if that would be legal. It never got any traction, and I'm not looking for traction here now, especially.
Well, I mean, if we don't use SDC funds,
We are going to use them. We just need,
I know. I know.
that's the whole point of it being
The
protected.
brick grant-
So you have a plan for the sewer, to upsize the sewer before you use that money. Like, it's not as constrictive, it's just the situation that we're in right now, where we're seeing money that's not used when we need to use
Right.
money.
that's the reason I asked David to explain it
Yeah.
right from the start.
So we all know what buckets of money are, but
And, I was having a conversation with somebody about, some of the spending and the budget and the paying for the shovel ready projects and all that kind of stuff. And that person who was kind of into engineering and public works said, you have to think about it in a positive way. You are building towards it and you're not there yet, but we're kind of like lining things up. We're like, have
takes
this pieces, the
forever.
SDC
It takes
fees,
forever.
then you're like, get your shovel ready. We know you can't get any grant if you don't have the shovel ready project. So you spend some money there. It's just that it takes a long time and hopefully some of these things will break and then we'll,
there's feasibility
See movement.
studies
See some
and
movement,
environmental
right.
impact studies. Once you get,
But it's strategic planning. And I think that's the part of it, is that right now we have not had the
We've
luxury
done.
here. We haven't had the luxury of being able to do strategic planning and doing it well and thoughtfully. but now we're being more thoughtful about the grants we're going for and how do they work and how are we doing this? And it's becoming a more coordinated effort across. And so we can have a longer term plan that is transparent and we can see it and it's moving forward. I think that's the key. But right now we're in an emergency situation, just trying to keep things at status quo. But we also have to have this branch of vision and a plan. So we're getting there.
Shovel-ready projects are pretty much what created the problem we're having right now in this budget session. But we didn't have any shovel-ready projects for years.
Absolutely have to have something
thinking of it,
ready
right.
to go.
We've got something.
Right.
It may need to be updated by the time we get to it,
Yep.
but it's a shovel-ready project. We got several of them. We didn't have those for 15 years.
No, it's good.
We did pay engineers to engineer projects for us, that like the contact tank and the PLC and stuff like that, but we didn't have something waiting for us to work in case we got a pot of gold or somebody wins the lottery. Like Pat
Well,
told
but
me, if
we've
he
been-
wins the lottery, he's
we've been-
gonna just give it to the city and
Yeah, that's.
those
You
kinds
know,
of
Yeah.
things.
the port
You'd like
hasn't
to have a
spent,
vapor
the
trail
port
after.
hasn't spent a nickel of its own money on anything ever.
Yeah.
We get grants for the engineering, grants for, you know,
Yeah.
it's just, I'm not sure why the city has been slow to, it should be in the strategic business plan.
Well,
Or-
the city, why has the city been slow? Is because there's been like a ton of turnover and.
No, I mean,
We're in
this
like
Yeah,
this
I don't
would be
think he means,
decades.
I don't think he means the last
Yeah.
like 5
No, this
years.
is
I think he
decades.
means long-term.
Culture, you know, the
culture
culture of the city to not, you know, I don't want to go up to the public trough and get, no, man, we need to be up there.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Well, we'll
Well, and people forget that we have been moving forward. We wanted to do meters and then the contact tank
Right?
came
Meters
up.
was a
Yep.
big one.
There's always something, and that's another reason to make sure.
But we have partners that I fear we're losing touch with some of our partners who have helped us in the past. Wild Rivers Coast Alliance, Ford Family Foundation, these people who have been friendly to it, do they even know we're here still?
Are there any other questions
Oh,
on
yeah.
this water system development? Fund?
No.
Way off in the weeds, sorry.
I'll move,
No,
No,
It's
it's
all
good.
good
No, thanks for
conversation.
keeping us on course. Thanks,
Yeah.
Tim.
I'll move to approve the water system development.
And you can ask questions after we,
I'll second it.
okay, so I have a motion and a second, so questions, and Corey has a question?
So are we even considering trying to take a portion of the $200,000 for Coast Guard Hill out of this fund or not? I guess is my question.
I think we should.
I
Are-
think
are
we should,
we-
and
We're not taking any of the Coast Guard Hill pump station out of this fund
No.
currently. But if we find out from John that that is an improvement or a percentage improvement, could we with a supplemental budget?
Either that or the following year you could do as a reimbursement, I would think.
Okay.
So if you completed the Coast Guard Hill pump station, you found out it was 40%,
Mhm.
you could ask in that next budget cycle reimbursement from SDCs for that project.
And that would only be for, we'd have to then look at the houses that were served and go back and
That's
take
for
the
the-
percentage from
That's
those
water going into the
SDCs,
main
right?
tank, so that should
I
be,
don't think it says that in this law.
That's water going up Coast Guard Hill. That's not going in the main tank.
Right?
oh, I thought it was going to the main tank.
Previous
Oh, that's.
Oh.
pump house goes up
Yeah.
Coast Guard Hill,
Should
not-
go up
not to the
Coast
tank.
Guard
The tank
Hill.
gets pumped from the water plant.
To an attorney.
So-
It's just like a free floating tank. The plant fills up the tank with the same pipe that it drains out of.
I don't see that.
Is legal.
And then that other little pump house just goes up the hill.
Oh, that's the one we're replacing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought it was from the bottom. up.
No, we're all gravity, like the pump from the.
Well, pumping it up from the treatment plant, don't we have to pump it up there?
Tried to get to the bottom of
I think
this.
that's.
What if
in
there's
the-
case
Is
law?
that in the
Plant.
treatment plant?
Easier to
Yeah.
get the case
Oh,
law,
okay.
So I put down that,
You know,
and I will look at that. That is a question we need to remember next year.
You need to remember, you need to notify the state of Oregon before you use any of this money.
That's the
Oh.
truth.
Oh,
It's serious.
is there a place where that the uses of approvals and uses is listed? In Oregon,
Fred, I've got it on my phone.
of cities who have,
It talks about some cities. I just read it really
Okay.
quickly.
because I wonder if we could kind of, yeah, that's what I was thinking, is maybe we could gauge our,
Because it would only be the accounts that,
But it
Um,
was talking
when-
about proposed.
oh, you're saying that it's different than that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't,
Here it says SDC fees may be used only for capital costs. They
Right.
cannot be used for ongoing facility system maintenance or
Well, there's the answer
projects
right there
that
then.
either fix the existing system deficiencies or replace existing capacity.
well, that would be,
Oh,
But a
replace
capital
existing
cost
capacity.
is- What's that?
Local governments must establish their SDCs by ordinance or law, and then they must have a methodology to calculate the reimbursement, blah, 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 blah.
we
So,
don't have that, huh?
well, here's the deal. I mean, what we have, well, I don't know. I mean, it's supposed to be, I did try to go down this rabbit hole, and it's supposed to be in our water master plan, how we do it. But it's fairly vague. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a whole write-up in the water master plan. I don't know, you, and before Jessica was saying, when we were doing that brick grant, that it had to be tied to the specific, that if somebody on DD Street paid in, that like it has to be tied to that, which is why you don't think that's the case. That's why Joseph spent hours going through and figuring out
Oh,
for the brick grant,
So
how
they're
the
paying
payments
the
would be.
fees for the system of Port Orford. So the entire water system of Port Orford is what you're paying the fee for, including the water plant.
So then why did we then have to, when we were doing that, go through and identify for every new line that we were going to improve, figure out how many SDC fees were paid for each line?
Why
that's
are you
probably a
identifying
requirement,
lines?
just to see the potential.
That wasn't Lehigh's request?
No, that was Jessica's.
I'm not sure she understood everything she thought she
Yeah,
knew.
and that, but I thought that was coming from David.
And then there's been
I
a
don't
recent,
think
I
Just
mean, a
wanted to throw it
2020
out
Senate
there.
Did I
bill
say that out loud?
Water plant,
changed those
how do you
requirements.
consider that being this person's property? Because they'll be all the way out on Paradise Point Road, but the water plant's way over here.
Right.
Well, if it's
How would
pumping
you
into the
charge
tank,
them the SDCs for a new water plant?
right?
I don't know if Dave was in on that conversation.
If we're pumping water into our tank
I'm not, is what I'm.
and everybody feeds off the tank, that ought to be just universally understood as
This,
an improvement for everybody.
So is this pump though, just to clarify, is this to get the treated water up to the tank to distribute to everybody? Or is it to get the pump to do the houses on Coast
I
Guard
thought it
Hill?
was the houses on Coast Guard Hill was this.
That's what I thought it was.
Oh,
That's why I was always under the impression
Oh,
that
I thought it
that the
was-
water plant pumped up to the tank. It was a free floating line where you just fill it up, tank's full, and then you get your back pressure. And then that pump house, because it's across the road too.
No, it's on the same side as the tower, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on the same side as the tower, but it's just right below it.
Right below it.
There's another pump.
The
Where
block,
is it on then? Because there's that other little pump house across the street too, that I always was assuming was the one, because the way
Oh.
John described it. So.
yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
And actually, no, I know, because he talks about a manhole, manifold and 2-inch pipe, so I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have a 2-inch pipe to pump the water into the tank.
What I saw in there was like
Talking about
4
the
inch.
station down, I guess it would be 7th Street.
That's what I was assuming, yeah.
That was built when I was 10 years old.
That's probably why it needs.
They had water back then?
Nothing against you, but that was a couple of street seasons ago. It's been there for a while.
Neighbor
Yeah,
fixed
that's
it up,
just an
right?
old,
Oh, it's nothing.
well, they probably use it for something, but it's
Gotcha.
not for that up above the water
Well, I
tank.
guess could be totally.
So we don't know if it's for,
Oh,
because that's
great.
two different things. If it's for the, getting it up to the
It may be to,
big tank.
it may be to
the
get,
whole
it's,
then it's the whole
it's
system.
below the big tank. I went in the building. It's got 4 inch lines coming off of at least 3 big giant pumps that are
Well,
running
then it is.
24/7. He says they don't shut off. And you gotta watch where you step because there's water shooting out every pipe. And I'm not kidding.
So that must be to go into the raw water, to the,
Traffic cone funds
Why would they
their
run
water.
24/7?
To the tank, to the,
Go into
the
the.
tank holds
treated-
potable water.
it's Treated water.
Right.
Yeah, it's treated water to fill the tank.
Why
Is
they
this
run
what he
it
keeps talking about? Because I'm trying to learn too. So is this what he keeps talking about, that they're gonna have to cut a hole in the
Yep,
side of the
yep,
tank because
yep,
he has to pull
yep.
out all the guts and
No,
all
not
the
the
things?
tank. They have to, it's a block building and it's probably, if I had to guesstimate, it's about 14 feet wide and
Yeah, the new
20
skid
foot
won't
long.
fit inside the building.
So they have to cut the block wall out, slide the old equipment out, slide the new equipment in, and then reblock it back up.
And this is for the main tank on Coast Guard Hill.
It's right below the main tank, so I'm assuming,
I mean, it's for the main pumps to
Yes.
keep every
yeah.
house
or
going.
for
Okay.
the treated water.
That was my understanding.
So that might qualify.
I would say it would.
Sucking water from.
But to Ann's point, we don't want to deplete that fund much because
No,
there's your-
especially with Ann,
there's your match, you know?
yeah, with the
I
match.
think this is totally a question for our new lawyer, because literally, as I was saying to Corey, when I was trying to figure out this
Right.
match, because Pat had to sign on the dotted line, yeah, we're going to come up with $700,000, and we were looking everywhere and doing our best. I had a hard time getting the answer because we did not have a lawyer. We have not had a lawyer. So, I kind of have a memo prepared to ask a lawyer. This is a new example. I could add to it when we get the new lawyer, which we're about to get. Maybe that's something we can turn that stone.
Well, the warning here
I
is,
think right in this moment.
the warning from David is just make sure if we touch these funds, we notify the state of Oregon first, and they will guide us through it.
And
Because-
who do you notify?
There's
Because maybe that's the
legislative-
person to ask.
There's staff contacts right here for legislative policy.
But it's not a are you looking at the League of Oregon Cities, or is it?
It's the Oregon legislature.
Yeah, but it would be a state agency.
It's it's
What state
Regardless,
agency
the
would it
cleanest
be?
way, it sounds like, to do it is to get reimbursed after you get the actual bill in your hand. And then you say,
And you
hey,
know the
state,
percentages and
we
you know,
got
yeah.
this bill and
Yeah.
we fit these parameters and we would like to transfer this much from
Yep.
our capital equipment reserve
Yep.
to general fund.
Or they
Right.
say, no, you
Yep.
can't do that.
And I have
Because, like,
that,
this government money, we gotta think longer term, like we're looking at this 1 year, and if we can gain that 120,000 and cover our butts, then it's all good. I mean, but that kind of answers our question, right? Is that we can't forget, but we need to make sure we got all of our,
we can't forget this, to look into the reimbursement when we find out from,
I think I saw it, write it down.
and I've got it highlighted on this
I-
page.
So it's highlighted as well.
You're doing good over there.
Thanks.
We've got a list.
Thanks,
Got our
Tim.
list.
I go a little crazier with my highlighter though.
Are you ready?
Okay,
That's a-
Water System Development Fund. I think I heard a motion.
I made a motion.
And,
I think
and who
did.
seconded?
We were in discussion.
Who seconded?
Gary did and
Right.
she
And
seconded.
Okay. And did we have any other comments before I call for a vote? Okay, I'm going to start with Greg.
Yes.
How about Gary?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Brett?
Webb, yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Corey?
It's okay to vote.
You can,
I'm going to vote no.
Tim? Yes.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
Anything with water in front of it, you say no.
Right now, yeah.
And that,
On the next
So-
page,
Just real quickly,
page
supplemental
24,
budget, we could write a supplemental budget and get reimbursed at any time. Anytime.
David said we could, or we could ask for reimbursement at our next budget session. And that gives us time to just do it.
We just need liquid right now, I think, is what Corey's kind of,
I get it.
You know.
I totally understand.
yeah, really the way I think would be acceptable this late in the game. Get the pump replaced, but you can find out from
Right.
the engineer
Yeah.
what the upgrade is. And then when you submit to the state, you can say, well, we're getting the reimbursement from the SDC for this.
And we have the documentation all lined up from the engineer on. I think it's a better way of doing it too.
Yeah.
I mean, other than like Brett and Corey are saying, we need them, we would like to have it right now. I mean,
At
it's kinda like
least,
Christmas,
yeah.
you know, might get us early.
At least waiting, you'll be able to find out how much of it will be.
So we're taking a bite out of that, the
Increase in
water rate increase.
And
So
if,
you would touch a reserve fund before you would touch an equipment reserve fund?
No, that wouldn't be,
And I was
that
like,
would be
what?
a repair.
Well, I just mean that, but that money is more attainable. Like if that's the gain, we have that hundreds
I
of
worry
thousands.
about my constituents being able to buy water.
I'm not arguing that. I'm
all
saying
I-
that you're looking at the SDC fund, but we didn't look at the capital equipment reserve for the vac truck as hard as we did this confined, fixed, only spend it this way fund.
I think that we could do better in the future at looking at a lot of things. And I'll leave it at that, if that answers your question. These types of meetings, it's so hard to kind of nail anything down. It's like at a policy level or at a management level is where all that needs to happen. You know what I mean?
Well, that's
It's
the
it's a
finance
type of
committee
thinking.
met like for, you guys had how many meetings? Like 7 meetings
117.
or something?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, where they were trying to do it for
Right.
us and did their best shot.
And also liquidate assets that they're costing us money.
There are some assets over at the city yard that need to be liquidated.
I mean, real property that's not
Oh,
getting.
yeah, I
We
get
have
it,
it on
yeah.
the list.
Not only do you sell it, but then you get money every year.
Exactly.
Yeah, every year.
You collect taxes on it every year. You're right. And I do have that in my notes as well.
That's my new thing.
Okay.
So you're the land baron here. You're
Yeah,
ready.
well, you took my streets away.
I hope you're not looking at me when
Okay.
you said that.
So-
I didn't do nothing to you.
David had something for us in the sewer system development fund.
On page 24 of 25, sewer SDC. This is about 94% reimbursement and 6% improvement fees. So roughly 94% of it could be used for repair and maintenance or make a payment as you wish.
So potentially, any costs associated, although there aren't supposed to be any costs associated with the Gales could come from this fund.
I didn't follow that.
I didn't hear either.
Any costs associated with providing effluent to the Gales, because it's a sewer, an
Okay.
element of
Yeah, I
sewage.
get it.
Not that,
Any cost to provide effluent out to the golf course?
I mean, we've got the 700,000 that we've been directed to what to do with it, and whatever. I'm not going to discuss
Where
it,
is
but
that?
there's got to be other
Where is it?
stuff, right? That we simply can't afford.
We're not supposed to spend any money on.
Oh, I'll tell you what, man. Yeah,
I'm going to say it's related to sewer. It would be usable.
Where does that money reside right now, the 700?
I don't think we've got it. Have we?
It's in Business Oregon, and the only way we can get it is if we figure out what we want to do with it and enter into a contract to build it and own it. That's how we can get it right now, but we're kind of in a little bit of a stuck spot because we haven't moved forward. We don't obviously have an agreement with them to do that.
There's more where that came from too.
The only thing that we have with them is the willingness to adjust our wastewater treatment plan to make effluent available for them if they come to us with the proper proposal.
We could be charging them for the affluent.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, dude.
That one was written into that motion though, so
I
that will be hard to charge them
This
for
is-
the effluent.
I was gonna say, I don't.
we fought. It was ugly. This community is divided, strongly divided over this project, and it I wanted to sell the water to him.
I think it will be an interesting question once we get a new lawyer to figure out, because the conditions have changed. There may be new conditions. If we're going to spend that money, it would be very different from the conditions. And I don't think we can really talk about it because it may be coming up against again. So, but I would just say that
Right.
that would be another question to ask a lawyer.
There is an ordinance or a resolution that
Yeah, but when
That
you
was
pass
the
a
original one 7 years ago.
and the conditions are one thing, and then the conditions change.
but
Well, there's a whole, yeah,
well, what the
the
attorney
difference
says,
is
because it's always been, we'll see you.
we won't charge you for come get it, but now you want it delivered. So there's the
Yeah.
main
Well, if
difference.
you want it
right?
delivered, it's going to cost so much.
The fear
Yeah.
was the how many pipes do you need to take effluent, and why do they need to be 8 feet apart? And we don't have water to provide for them. And then I thought, well, maybe we can get water from them because there's water out there as a secondary source for us, so there's lots of intricacies that went on and stuff, but
Okay.
I think it's a to be continued
it's
situation.
absolutely a to be continued.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's not. Okay, so on the sewer development, 94% can be used for reimbursement, repair, and what was the 6% for? Upsizing?
Upgrade.
Upsize the improvement fee.
And does anybody have the answer as to why the sewer side is different than the water side? Can I ask that question, or that's going to open up a whole can of worms?
Yeah, we wish
When
it
you
was.
calculate the SDC fees, it's calculated on how much capacity the plant has, or the system has. At the time, the sewer system, New Elfall, it has a lot of extra capacity to sell its customers. Water had no extra
Okay,
capacity.
that makes sense.
So it's supply and demand.
Yeah.
Like everything else.
Okay.
So why do
There's
we,
more fun.
we know, so in this fund, we're leaving a lot as an unappropriated reserve. But we know that the sewer, like the wastewater treatment plant has a total list of really important things to do that need to get done. So how come we don't have anything budgeted for improvements this year or? Oh, because this is SDC. Okay,
This
sorry.
is SDC.
Sorry,
The other
sorry, I'm
funds were
sorry.
what we've already talked
Got
about.
it.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep.
You answered your question. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, thank you. I'm
Take
sorry.
more of those
Momentary
questions.
like lapse of
I agree.
fund overload.
Well, there's 1
This is
million.
that 2-hour mark in a meeting right
$1,000.
here.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay,
1
so
million, 1,015,000.
Are there-
Funds which should cover any.
I'll make a motion to approve the sewer system development revenue.
I'll second it.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Corey,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Greg? Tim, yes.
What about Brett?
Brett, yeah.
Brett, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting you. 'cause
Well,
you weren't
yes.
here when we
Yeah,
started.
I showed up late. That's what I get.
Sorry, I apologize for that.
Maybe
Um,
more brighter colors.
The sewer, the sewer
I
system.
actually thought I was
development
doing pretty good with bright
fund
colors.
passed.
But then I look at Tim.
So that would bring us to page 25, which is just a summation showing that everything's in balance. The one item that we have left is that we agreed to leave the general fund as the last to come back to approve it. We need to approve it now. When you make your motion, you might want to make the motion. If you'll remember, I moved unappropriated up to contingency. So when you make the motion, just make the motion with the recommended changes.
I move to approve the general fund budget with the recommended changes. Do I have to specify them or is that sufficient?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. That includes the recommended changes that we've all gone over. And are there any questions before I call for the vote?
Well, being that this is the final vote, I just wanted to ask, so everybody else other than the finance committee, this is the first time we heard about these water rate increases and the full difficulties of our city budget.
Mhm.
And, there's people on this committee, as we all feel, concerned about those water rate increases. So before we adopt it, would you guys just mind telling us, that you looked under every stone to consider other options?
Well,
Or I guess I'm just asking that. Is there anything else we need to be considering before we?
there were two, there's the only monies that we could find were the money in the Vacon truck. And then it was discussed that the halftime police officer position would be eliminated. And it looks like David was able to work that back into the budget. Those are two amounts I can think of.
That and the furlough days were also another option.
And the furlough days brought, I think, across the funds, if I remember correctly with my notes, was 104,000,
I recalculated that, it was across the funds was 75,000.
75,000 across the funds for the furlough days.
Which is 12 furlough days,
That was 12 furlough days. So
Employee.
if
which
you
is a
did
5% decrease.
6 furlough days, you roughly have,
Mhm.
half that.
It's true.
Right.
So true.
So that furlough days was like 75K. The Vacon truck was how much?
152.
150.
150. And that's what you chose. And eliminating the halftime police officer, I think we decided that he actually brings in, kind of pays for himself with the,
I think the one reason the finance committee went more with the base rate is because the others are a one-time fix. You're trying to get
Got
the
it.
rates up to where water is self-sufficient.
Got it.
So you start doing these one-time fixes and you're right back in the same boat we were again.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for explaining that, David. And I just think that I understand that the furlough days, that's a lot of, to put onto the backs of employees that have really been,
Especially with the
training.
union negotiations the way.
yeah. And it's not
Yeah.
that, it's a lot for each person and it doesn't really buy us that much.
We talked about that.
No, but that is looking under the stones. That puts in perspective how hard they were looking for options. And even just to entertain the option of furlough days for all the staff should put in perspective how much these guys were digging to make this balance. And I can't tell you all how much I appreciate it. We'd have, however many meetings you have had, we'd have twice as many sitting in here trying to get through a lot of the details. So
Yeah,
really-
I really appreciate that too. And thank you for explaining that to me. I was just kind of trying to put it together and feel like we're doing our due diligence because it is a big rate increase.
Well,
And there was no way to do one fix. The fix ended up being
Yes.
20 different
Little
little
things,
fixes
yeah.
to add up to making
Right.
it all work.
And this group has come up with I have at least 10 or 12 items here that we can still
Yeah.
look
Pursue.
at and pursue and discuss because,
If you find anything, just save it for next year.
yeah, no, I know, but
No, but we're looking at
we had
levies.
7
We're
meetings
looking
in
at-
over 20 hours. I mean, I didn't count each hour, but I know it was over 20. But, we had a very short period of time too to get this done. So David could even present us a budget. He was right up against the
He
timeline.
was making changes between each meeting.
Yeah, up till 2 o'clock at night, a couple nights and, yeah.
And I might add that he volunteered his time to do that this year.
Oh my
Thank
gosh,
you.
David,
No,
thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank you.
I think that the statement was if the employees were.
Oh, we're
No,
furlough-
that's not
furlough,
true.
Right.
So,
Right.
Thank you anyway. Yeah.
so anyway, I mean, that was a very generous offer. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much for all your work, everybody. all of you, but for helping us to understand that.
And I think you're right to ask those questions because it is a big hike and we are going to get a lot of questions from citizens who, you know, even a $20 increase on their water bill is noticeable and you have to understand it in order to be able to do that because, but
It's a tongue twister.
When we were I was going to say, when we were having that discussion the day that we were talking about the water enterprise fee, we did talk about the need to have some sort of explanation. And so hopefully, Melissa, that's something that you will be able to help work on, how we roll that out.
But I guess I would want to know how you folks want to do it because that is, you know,
Well, this not only heals us for this year, but I mean, it starts to heal us and I hadn't really thought about it that way. I mean, we can rob all the money we want until we have no money left.
Well, that's kind of where we're at,
But
basically.
yeah, but that is a one-time fix
Yes.
for this year. And the next year we're in the same boat and the year after, it seems. And hopefully we've learned a little bit of a lesson because there is some positive from all that engineering cost. We have shovel-ready projects, but we maybe should have listened to our gut a little bit more rather than listening to one person. I think we all learned a lesson, to be honest with you. I know I did. And
Because we were kind of misinformed. We just
yes.
assumed that was.
Well,
But if I may, you know, I didn't sleep really well after our last meeting.
Yeah.
And I kept stewing things. And I'm thinking not just about myself, but people in town. And if people, I mean, I know I personally made some complaints about our city administrator at the time about things that weren't getting done. I think other citizens were making complaints. Council, I don't think my complaints were heard. I still don't have a water meter. My water bill was miscalculated. I know people who's a single mom with 2 kids who was having $500 a month water bills, and she kept coming in and complaining about those water bills, and nothing was done. And so now the folks in the city who have been complaining and have been seeing that things were going wrong are the ones that are going to be paying for the mistake. And that just morally doesn't seem right to me. And I have a problem with that. And, you know, saying yes now to this budget means that I'm accepting the hike, the increase, right? So are we going to have a meeting with constituents, with everybody in town talking about the water rate, or are we just going to impose it? And how are people getting the $39,400 back that were overpaid? I mean, you know, how has that decision been made? Are we just going to credit them, or are we going to actually give them money back? How are we going to make sure people aren't overbilled in the future? I mean, I'm still getting overbilled because I'm supposed to only be paying sewer usage. And I don't have that meter when I'm sure 80% of my water goes into the ground and not down the sewer. It's just not, it doesn't seem right to me.
which meter? I'm confused. I wasn't
Irrigation
here.
meter, I have ducks and I have a garden and we are so conscientious about our showers and what we do in the house that 90%, I mean, I get charged overage all the time. You know, we can afford it. It's okay, but it's the principle of it that is a concern to me.
It's difficult to be on this side of the desk and explain how all that time the council wasn't just sitting idle during that time.
Those
But
complaints weren't brought to us.
Yeah, they weren't brought to us, and there was a few of us that were dealing with that, and because of the way the system is, we weren't able to share it with the whole council, and everything had to go through all of these steps, and there was investigations, and there was.
you cannot function without a trustworthy manager. You cannot function without a trustworthy manager. The manager has control of our incoming emails and can view emails that are sent back and forth and can use that information to
They shouldn't.
do anything that they wish.
We
I
should
think it's a
probably-
poor system. I don't like it. Well, I'm not saying anybody did,
Yeah, well, it's just, yeah, there's,
but to Gary's point, it takes a long time. It really does take a long time, even if we had heard those things and given direction.
So there's a lot of things too that are personnel issues that can't be talked
Can't
about
talk about,
outside of
yeah.
anything. And so I think that's the first thing. Number one, I do want to talk to you more about if you've come in to get an irrigation meter and you haven't been able to get one, then we need to solve that for you. So this is the first I'm hearing of this. So I would love to have you come in and let's talk about these things to make sure. And to your other point about the curtailment money, I just sent in the information to hire the lawyer, and I have a laundry list of things for that lawyer to do. One of those things, I've already called the insurance company to talk about how do we do this, and it was talk to your lawyer. So until I can get this person fully onboarded and figure out what our relationship is going to be and how it goes, and I can get that laundry list in front of them. But that is one of the things on there is how do we take this error that was found based upon an audit and based upon new eyes looking at it and saying, how do we make that right? But I have to go by that legal counsel, which now at least we have a person in the hopper.
Well,
So-
the big thing is it's on the budget, so it's tracked. It's on the budget, we'll figure out the process, it'll get allocated, and that line will be zero at the end of the year.
and it is just incredibly, it really builds my confidence that Melissa has identified the proper process of like getting the attorney, looking through it instead of saying, oh, let's just do whatever, so I'm just so grateful.
And also, one of the things that we did add in this budget is an accountant to be here, to be someone who is going to keep their eyes on it more, where that oversight wasn't there. We haven't had that level of oversight, and I want that check and balance. I don't want that much power or control because it needs to be spread. There has to be a check and a balance. And so now that's what we're trying to do is to, particularly with the money, to make sure that there is someone that's looking at that. So I went even today, asked on my listserv, how do I hire who are these people? How do I do this? I called a former financial director yesterday who I'm very close with. She won't come out of retirement for it. Dang it, Shannon Ferrier. But she did get me on a line of some other people. And then League of Oregon Voters, actually, I found a listing of people. And now Dina is like researching those people who have said, yes, they would stand up and to do this to see who we could maybe be looking at. So now that it's in here and we can budget for it, now I can actively go look for those people and do that. So we are definitely trying to make these things right, from the customer service of someone who was not treated well and didn't understand and needs help, to the bigger systemic thing of like, how do we get our fiscal house in order? And that's where this comes from. Although I hate that we're going to have hard conversations and there's going to be lots of people with a lot of big feelings about this. And so we're going to try to mitigate that, but also you're never going to mitigate all of it because it's going to make people frustrated. So we're all going to have to discuss that.
And I think, I don't know when you want to discuss how we roll that out. That's like a different time, or, it just seems like it is an important discussion to have because of the budget, and we could just adopt this, but that is the big thing of this budget. We're doing a status quo budget, except we're having big rate increases. So
Okay, so did I get a motion to,
yes.
Yes.
and we have a second? And are you guys ready to vote or?
Yeah, I guess I just asked that question of when do we have that conversation? Is that a conversation to have now? Is it a conversation?
I don't think it's a conversation to have now because I think we're all
Right.
like, yeah. And I think that becomes the budget. Correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like the budget is the part that the decisions have been made. And then now comes the policy or the next decisions at another time to say, how do we implement this? How do we share it? How do we do
Okay,
that?
thank you for that clarification, Melissa.
And this still has to be accepted by the council, so everyone still has an opportunity, all the constituents still have an opportunity to weigh in. Now the document will be presented before the next meeting so they can see it. And
It would be helpful for council persons to bring their budget with them, budget book with them to the next meeting, I would imagine. because
You have my budget book.
I do, right here. No, because
I have another copy.
a well thought out adjustment, proposed adjustment could be floated. And it could happen just like that. Instead of all this, all the talking, somebody could say, I propose we take, line 37 and make it a 0 and transfer it to this and make it a that. And, you could do that. The council still can do that.
Mhm.
It's not done till it's done. But we do also have another day here that's in the thing. I too am concerned about that rate increase, the water rate.
I mean, it's the second year in a row.
Well, I think that as a policy matter, we should have,
COVID money. We had, what, $360,000 of COVID money that should have gone into possibly the water.
Well, I mean, in a way it did, because it went into all that engineering.
Yeah.
we didn't know. But as a policy, I think it would be wise to adopt a policy that the water rates increase with the cost of living
Every year.
every single year.
Yep.
It's just like,
Always the best way to do it.
you don't get
We
blown
have
away.
that policy, that's what we should have.
I think
That should be
they
just
did have it, but they
ground zero.
wrote it for COVID.
We've had water rate increases.
But it comes down to like our
with the
feelings.
exception of 3 years.
It comes down to our feelings, the weather, this,
Right.
that, the other. Meanwhile, all of our other requirements would take a hit because we might not want to raise it or whatever,
Well, the problem is nobody wants to raise it ever. And so then we're like in this huge hole of like
Where we are now.
The board's looking at raising the rates from about $450 to about $600 for a month. Is that right?
365 to 585 is what
That's
the
how,
commission is considering.
and a policy did exist to raise it by the cost of living every single year, but it didn't happen. And here's just a beautiful example of it. Now we're raising the rate something like 18%. Is that?
Oh, it's like 40.
Is that what it was? Oh, because they didn't. Oh, yeah, forget it. You know what? That's a horrible example.
Yeah. I was wondering where you were going with that one.
I will try to work that out. But yeah, no, I think it's tit for, I was going to say tit for tat. That's a terrible thing to say in a public meeting. It shouldn't cost, because it's just got to be that way. It just has to be that way. That it's got to go up small incremental things, not once every 5 years, not,
And it boils down to the upgrade or the increase in the rate is what it costs to make water now, as long as we have the system that we have.
right. And it's everywhere. It's every family sits down and their paychecks just are not getting them what they used to get them.
Absolutely.
And, $100,000 used to seem like a lot of money.
Now it's $1 million isn't a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I have a suggested motion if somebody wants to make a motion.
We already have a motion.
I have to hand it to whoever wants to make a motion.
We have the motion.
I think it's done.
Yep. but
Oh.
This motion, we need to add the
Approve the
tax
budget.
rate.
After we vote on the general budget.
The way that is written, looks like it's included in that motion, but I thought we always did it afterwards,
See?
like you said.
Here we go.
It doesn't look like it's written into that motion to approve the general fund.
Oh, man.
The way I read it, it looks like it was written into it.
It does, but yeah, I mean, it could be one motion or two motions. We always do it in two motions at the port.
This is the funniest thing.
It would cover it.
I think that you have to, if I'm a person in the government, you have to
Your motion then?
exhibit the need for the money.
Do we need to retract motions then?
They're gonna
Then
add
you
that
tax
to
the
it,
people
yes.
for the money,
That's the right sequence.
right? That should make sense to me. You say, we need this money, we've identified it.
Call for the vote really quick and then I'll make a motion to approve the property taxes for
Tax
the
rate,
fiscal
okay.
year at the rate of 2.
Oh, you gotta approve the budget before you can take the tax.
That's what we're doing right
Okay,
now.
all right.
That's the motion on the table is to approve
Included.
the budget.
Understand.
That's what I was saying, just to clean it up, approve
Oh,
the budget and then
absolutely.
we'll approve the taxes.
Okay, so I will call for the vote on the general fund. Greg?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Brett?
Webb, no.
Ann?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Corey?
No,
Okay. Tim? Yes.
Okay, then I would like to make a motion to approve the property taxes for fiscal year 2024-25 at the rate of 2.2688 per thousand of the assessed value for operating purposes and 180 per thousand for public safety option tax for 5 years.
Second? Was that a motion?
last year.
Yeah, second that.
Same tax rate. No, it's 2009, 2000.
I probably shouldn't ask this question at this moment, but I can't help it. So one of the things I was lying awake on thinking about this water bill rate is that when you tax the ratepayers, that you're kind of taxing or you're adding to people who might not be able to afford it as much as if you were to tax the property owners. But we don't ever have that conversation of raising the property tax is more,
You have to have a vote.
I think
You have
it's
to have a
maxed
vote.
out, isn't it?
so we
Uh,
raise it the maximum amount, right?
We raised, so when our property rate was enacted, it was without a police department.
Yeah.
We,
Okay.
we had this discussion. So
Yeah.
it was based on providing water and sewer services, and that's what it was based on. There, Ann is asking, how would it be possible to change our tax rate if that's what we chose to do? Is that even possible, or does that take a vote of the citizens?
You can lower it,
Well, yeah,
you cannot increase it.
okay, so.
So we
Having
can,
said that,
we can increase the fees, but we can't, I'm just raising the,
well, you can also, our partner at the county is who provides assessments, right? Can we ask them how current our assessments are?
good question. Another
That's-
thing for our
Because
list.
that can go, there is no cap to that, although
They have to
taxes,
go- I think don't they have cap? They don't have a cap?
not on assessment.
I know they've done some assessment. I've seen them around in the last few years, quite a bit more
They
than.
came to my house every single year on the loop that I'm building, every single year.
Yeah.
And they call that a $500,000 home.
Oh, yeah, I
Okay. Well, so that's a good idea. I just wanted to ask that because it does seem like that could be a way to lighten the load for the people who can afford at least, but we can't really do that. So anyway,
Well,
Sounds like-
I would say follow up on the assessor with the assessor's office and
good idea.
ask them,
How current?
are you here? Are you?
Well, and you know what you're gonna get from them, because evidently they have to cut 31% from every department starting right now
One, yeah.
before July 1. So they're only gonna,
Maybe we can contract an assessor to them that serves our city.
that's true too.
With all of our extra money,
And they hit, oh, well, no, I mean, you figure out how to do it.
you pay for it if you go. Yeah.
Who seconded this motion?
I think that there's persons with those expertise that
$2 and
2.2688.
are probably in our community.
Okay, are there any other discussions on the tax rate? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Corey,
Yes,
Randy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Brett,
Webb, yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Gary,
yes.
Greg,
No.
Tim, yes.
That's it.
Yep, budget has been approved.
Is there? I didn't even know. we
Meeting
had
adjourned, sir?
Yes.
Advertising.
Meeting adjourned.
6:52.
I don't know, I can make it go public.
What are you doing next year around this time?
Definitely gonna be
I'm
out
gonna
of the
be in
country.
Mexico, yeah.